Hey guys, welcome to another video. Today I'm actually talking about a new series you can watch right now on Universal streaming service Peacock, and that is Ted the TV series based off the franchise of films by Seth MacFarlane. For those who never saw them, they were from 2012 and 2015. Ted and Ted 2 were the names of the movies. And as most of you already probably know, Seth MacFarlane is known for Family Guy and being a part of American Dad and a couple of other big TV shows and stuff like that. Um, he also did the TV show The Orville for those who've never seen that. But basically, in this new Ted TV series, basically we follow John Bennett, who was originally played by Mark Wahlberg in the movies, played by a younger person this time because it's in the 1990s. John Bennett, and we also follow Ted, the character that Seth MacFarlane voices both in this and in the movies. And we basically get to follow their antics throughout the 90s, kind of what they were up to when they were in high school, what they did when they were still living at home with John's mom and dad, and other stuff around the Boston area that they were up to throughout the 90s. So throughout this show, we basically see kind of how Ted and John basically became the friends that they did, how they kind of got addicted to drugs, how they kind of became lowlifes, kind of didn't really amount to anything, as we saw in that first Ted movie. By the time the credits roll and we start seeing, John being John, played by Mark Wahlberg in that movie. So there is basically 7 episodes here. Each episode focuses on something that John and Ted get kind of in trouble with or have a scenario that they have to resolve. And that's over the course of this Ted TV series, which, like I said, you can stream right now on the Peacock Universal streaming service. But overall, guys, I really enjoyed this series. I also really liked the Ted movies back when those came out. Like I said, 2012 and 2015 is, I think, when those movies came out. So I actually kind of like that they went with the prequel route, that they focused more on John and Ted when they were in high school. I think even Seth MacFarlane said in interviews that it'd be too difficult to get Mark Wahlberg to do a series like this. So instead, he decided to do kind of John in his younger years and focus on kind of what he was up to and stuff like that. So for my positives and negatives of the show overall, I like how this show continues. For my positives, of course, first, it continues the franchise in a fun way. We get to see how, like I said earlier, how John and Ted kind of became the people that they did over the course of those Ted movies. I also like how it takes place in the 90s so that we can kind of see how they reacted to Jurassic Park and Sega Genesis and Blockbuster Video and all the stuff that all of us that lived through the 90s remember, and remember kind of how big they were throughout the 90s. So I do like how this continues the franchise in a really fun way. I also like the John and Ted chemistry. I thought that was kind of continued forward after what Mark Wahlberg established in the Ted movies. They got a younger actor who was actually really good in the role. You would swear it is kind of a younger Mark Wahlberg in a way, just because he's so believable with his Boston accent and the way that him and Ted kind of play off of each other. So whoever they got to play this young John actor is really good in the show. And obviously the two of them working off of each other is still a very strong positive that continues forward after the Ted movies, and it thankfully works its way into the TV series to give us more of that chemistry that we all know and love. And I think the show kind of further cement kind of how I feel about Seth MacFarlane overall, that I think he does belong in directing duties, writing duties, and voice acting duties for his show and content. So whether it's TV shows or movies or just content overall, I think he does belong in those areas in particular. I'm not a huge fan of him as far as him as a live action performer. I think his career is better focused on, like I said, directing, writing, and voice acting. So it's not that he can't do live action. I feel like when he is doing live action, he's best suited with doing the voice acting portion, doing the directing portion, doing the writing portion. Let other live action performers do the actual live action bits. I personally feel he's a little stale in those areas, but like I said, directing, writing, and voice acting, I think the show further cements that this is kind of where he belongs. I think he also kind of belongs better on TV than on film as well, even though I really did enjoy those first two Ted movies. I really was not a big fan of A Million Ways to Die in the West, which he had a live action role in. And I also was not a big fan of the Orville show that he also had a live action role in. So I think this had a lot to say with that he doesn't belong in that area in particular. But like I said, if he's in the 3 categories that I listed, he's definitely at his best, and that's definitely the areas where he best belongs, and I feel as well. I also like how the show has fun with its 90s setting. It does have fun with, like it's a Blockbuster Video, Sega Genesis, Jurassic Park, all this stuff that we hear about over the course of um, the show and kind of the setting that it's taking place in. They even have kind of the hidden off adult area in the Blockbuster Video, and so they kind of play off of that. So it does have fun with its 90s setting. For those who lived in the 90s or aware of anything that came out in the 90s whatsoever, there was a lot of nostalgia in the show that relates to that stuff. So I had a lot of fun with the show overall, specifically with the setting of the show too. I also just really cared about John and Ted's success throughout the show. I really wanted them to succeed in their missions. I wanted them to succeed in kind of these goals that they set for themselves. So the show does a really good job really making sure that I care about the two of them, care about their happiness, care about how high school is kind of a better suited place for them now that the two of them are together in that place. So I do like how the show really made me feel invested in both John and Ted's success and getting along with everybody in school and stuff like that. And overall, the show made me wanted to have a season two for this. If they greenlight a season two, if Seth MacFarlane's allowed to make one, I'll be there day one. I'll be there whenever Peacock or another streaming service would pick this up for season two. I think what they made here was really that good. And yeah, if they make a season two, I will definitely be there to watch it. But for my negatives of the show, I think it does rely a little bit on shock value a little too much. There is a lot of moments throughout the show where they do base it off of, oh my god, I can't believe they said that in a sitcom. Oh my god, I can't believe they said that in high school. Oh my god, I can't believe they said that to a complete stranger. There is a lot of that in the show, and I feel like the humor was best when it wasn't doing that kind of stuff. So it does rely on that shock value a little too much. I know Family Guy sometimes plays off of that too a little bit, but I think it does play off of it a little too much here, and it does rely on it a little too much as well. So I thought that aspect of the show they could have leaned back on a little bit. Speaking back of leaning back on stuff, the show does lean heavily into political and controversial opinions that, especially that were big in the '90s as well. Another thing that I was not a huge fan of over the course of the show, I think I said some of the best humor that was shown throughout the course of the show wasn't related to politics, wasn't related to controversies, wasn't related to people saying like really out there things to other characters. So I thought that aspect of the show they could have leaned back on a little bit because they do put it on very heavily onto the viewers over the course of the show, I felt. And overall, I think the films, the Ted films, are more fun than this overall series. Nothing wrong with the series. I like it overall. I feel like the Ted movies are kind of better in that 2 hour restricted runtime overall because the show is obviously longer than 2 hours if you count all 7 episodes put together. I think it kind of overstays its welcome in certain parts. You can definitely tell they're trying to find ways to keep it going as a series and stuff like that. So overall, I think the Ted overall story works better as a film than it does as a series, even though the series has its moments as far as how they can pull it off. I think the Ted story overall worked better as films. This is also a very skit heavy kind of show. It's one of those shows where they kind of go off on a tangent on something, whether it's something that Ted and one of the family members disagree on or something. They go on it really heavily. It's kind of a long series of jokes before they move on to the next scene. It is a lot like that if you kind of get annoyed with that pretty quickly in the series. So just go in knowing that it is very skit heavy. It is very sketch heavy as well, as far as kind of a joke that's thrown out there and they keep building on it and building on it and building on it before eventually moving on to the next scene. So it is one of those shows that kind of does that, unfortunately. I thought they could have leaned back on that a little bit. Specifically, if they go for a season two, I think they could lean back on that a little bit. And overall, for the finale episode, without giving away spoilers, I think this show would have benefited from a more closer kind of finale episode. Like the episode where it's like, okay, this is a great way to wrap up season one and stuff. They do kind of do something at the end that does establish John and Ted's friendship a little bit, specifically when by the time we see them in the films. But I think the series would have benefited from like that nice closer episode that really establishes that this is the final episode of the season before we move on to a season two. Yes, I know you want to keep the viewers hungry and stuff like that, but I thought the final episode it felt like there really could have been one additional episode they could have done to follow that up before wrapping it up completely. They don't go that route, unfortunately. So I thought more of a closer episode for season one would have benefited the show overall. But overall, guys, I'm going to give Ted the TV series that's available right now on Peacock to stream an 8.5 out of 10. Really enjoyed the show. I'm totally down for a season two if Seth MacFarlane can get it made. Um, like I said, there is a couple things along the way that I think the show could have leaned back on a little bit because it does kind of put it on you heavily over the course of the show. But overall, I think if you like the Ted movies, specifically the first, the first one I think is my favorite one of the Ted movies, the first Ted film. I think you're really going to enjoy this if you really liked that first Ted film in particular. So 8.5 out of 10 for me. Highly recommend seeing it. I think you do need like the basic ad tier plan with Peacock to stream this. I don't think it's the part of the free tier of Peacock in any way, but 8.5 out of 10 for me. I highly recommend seeing it if you like the Ted films, and I will see you back here for the next video.